Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons match preview with the three of us today, myself, Mike, and Sloth, back on the cams. And yeah, lads, good win against Olympiacos. Performance wasn't really matching it, and we now go into that Nottingham Forest game. As we mentioned before, it really is a must-win because of our Premier League form at the moment, and we really have started to drop down the league. So if we're serious about this season and we're serious about the ambitions that have been said, we do need to be winning games like Forest at home. No disrespect to Forest, but it's a team we should be looking to beat, especially at home. So before we get into the Forest kind of preview breakdown, let's just touch on the West Ham side of things and what's kind of happened in the last few weeks, because it's been a bit of a up and down mix of emotions, really. Beating Arsenal, beating Olympiacos, but then also, losing to Everton, losing to Brentford. So it really is just up and down at the moment. What's your kind of thoughts on West Ham at the moment and the whole situation?
See, I've been staying away from social media in the well, mainly because obviously I have lack of time at the moment for obvious reasons, but also it's tiresome, the argument being made about West Ham from both camps. You have the camps that it's completely Moyes out, the camp that's completely Moyes in. There never seems to be any real middle ground at all. And even when there is that conceding of, he's done a fantastic job during his period and he's taken us on to heights that we haven't experienced, many of us as a fan base. We've seen us get to a final, but we've not seen us win one. So he's taken us to heights that we've never seen as fans of West Ham, and even Moyes hasn't actually achieved, because that's the first time he's won a major trophy. So, we are in our most successful spell as a football club. The problem is, it then comes down to where you align yourself in terms of your views on football. So either you are very much in the vein of you want to see good attacking football, maybe a bit of possession based, and there's maybe others that say, look, a win's a win. We are what we are. We shouldn't be above ourselves. So I think you have these two camps that are constantly, juxtaposed to each other. And there seems to be no willingness to have any kind of middle ground in there. And, you see points made about, Moyes saying he realizes the team's not creative enough. They're not doing enough in which to be decisive in possession to pull teams around. So he's recognised there's a problem. There is a weakness in our play. Now, counter argument is, which is obviously what we're seeing at the moment, is, well, that's his job. Your job is to get those players to do that.
Yeah.
An interesting counter argument is, well, who's to say he isn't doing that? And that's not what they're doing they're doing that on the training pitch. However, when they get on the pitch, the players can't translate what they've done in training into it. So then becomes that, depending again which side you're on, it's either the manager's the problem or the players are the problem in not executing. And I think that's the issue we're at the moment, with this two camps within the fan base, and depending on your allegiance or your standing on football, you're either going to be pushing and defending to the hilt Moyes, even when sometimes maybe you shouldn't, because there are some elements that are indefensible, like constantly bringing on Danny Ings, and then there's the other part, obviously. Well, some of it maybe is down to the players, and we should be asking more of them rather than just constantly piling in on the manager.
Yeah, I think we've said it before, but there are both sides to it. But as we kind of go into this Forest game, it's going to be a game where it's probably going to be similar to that Everton pattern of, like, they're going to sit in, Forest in averaging possession around 38% this season. So they're a team that's very, very happy to do exactly what we do. And that's, kind of sit in. We saw it against their win against Aston Villa last week. Aston Villa had all of the play, all of the ball, but Nottingham Forest were there to kind of capitalize on those moments, and they ended up winning the match 2-0. They've gone to Chelsea away this season and picked up a win by doing exactly that. So they have the players and the pace to cause us problems, which is, I think, my biggest concern going into this, as we kind of now segue into the preview. Forest are going to come and sit there and try and get us on the counter and look for those gaps. And they're going to say, well, you know what, you have the ball. We've seen what you're kind of like at the moment when you do have possession. So this is going to be perfect for us. So it's going to now be up to us to change that, because I think against Olympiacos, they didn't really threaten much. They had a couple of moments, that one set piece in the second half. But I thought in large we controlled a lot of the actual possession, but we just didn't do much with it. We'd really struggled to do stuff in the final third. So, going into this Forest game, it's going to be massive. You know, they've only scored 12 goals from 11 this season, so they're not actually that high scoring team that maybe people might have thought, because they've actually tightened up a lot more defensively as well. I think they've only conceded 15 goals, which is still quite high, but it's not as high as what it was last season when they were leaking goals left, right, and centre. So they're going to come here with a plan. We know exactly how this is going to pan out. So what do we have to do differently, Sloth, going into this one? Because we know what to expect now. We know we're going to have the ball. Moyes has already kind of alluded to the fact that he's in his experimental phase with Bowen up top and, trying different things with putting on attacking, flowing players. How do we break down this Forest team and make sure we are, defensively there as well if we're going to have a lot of the ball? Well, Mike, we've lost Sloth there, so I'm going to direct the question back to you. How are we going to break this Forest team down, and make sure that we use our possession well, and defensively we're pretty sound as well?
Yeah, I think we probably defended a bit better against Olympiacos this time around. Again, looked far more assured than he has in other games. I think a part of that problem has been the fact that Mavropanos, he's not really played with him, so there is slight kind of miscommunications. Like the goal that led to Brentford's equaliser was basically neither of them really knew which one was going to kind of go for that ball, and it then ended up being a hasty kind of touch. So I think the fact that it's going to be another game with them together, and I think it's probably going to be for a little bit longer. I wouldn't be surprised if it is until middle of December. We know what Zuma's like with injuries, and there seems to be no return date, which says to me that the injury is more severe than what's being led on.
Yeah.
So I'd suspect that those two, they need more time together, and I think it's going to be good that Forest don't tend to like to play with much of the ball, because that means it's going to allow them a bit more time to settle into the game.
It's a Gaird's game more, isn't it? That sort of
I think what we saw against Everton, where I think Gerd was pretty good, was the being able to hit those diagonals a couple of times, being able to bring the ball out of our defence as well. I think that's something we need to do a lot more of, and we're going to need a lot more of, because we have Alvarez as well. He can allow us to have that with one of those centre backs. And I think Gerd is probably the most likely, and I think that's something that we probably need to encourage in games where we play against, say, a Forest team who look to defend or sit in, much like we do. You then need to create overloads. So you need to bring more players into midfield. So if you're not going to invert your fullbacks, you're going to then need to ask a centre-back to invert. And I know people are like, well, how can you invert a centre-back? It's basically inverting essentially meaning you play in a different position to where you are. So you make your centre-back into a defensive midfielder. That kind of argument. That's essentially an inversion of his role.
Yeah.
So by kind of allowing him to step into midfield, and in some cases then just Alvarez either dropping slightly behind or being kind of next to him, you can create then a small little kind of triangle in with Mavropanos sitting between the two, and them two kind of sitting at either side of the 18-yard box and push your fullbacks on, etc. I think that's probably something we're going to have to do against these other teams, because it's going to allow us to players to then move into other spaces. That the one issue is then our players tend to be fairly static at times, and if they're all kind of standing in a line in front of the back kind of 4 or 5 or whatever Forest look to play, it makes it easy. And I think that's one of the problems that we've had in games, is that we've been far too easy to defend because we haven't had much going in behind. What we did see when we were doing well against Olympiacos was we had Kudus going in behind, and we constantly were hitting that ball, and then we seemed to stop doing it, and we stopped with the pace of it, and that's our problem. We start to get really slow, because if we're not kind of getting immediate results, we tend to think, oh well, maybe we should change it up, rather than it's actually working. We need to continue with that, and then it's about being able to do what the likes of City and Liverpool have done for years, in that you have to then be able to quickly get the ball to the other side, so to move it across field very quickly, whether that's long diagonals or what have you. But you need to then kind of create the opportunities who then have an overload on the other side by drawing a team in and then switching very quickly. It's something that I don't think we've quite yet sussed out how to do. If we can start to work that out a bit more, and I think obviously with Emerson and how good he is on the ball when he gets the opportunity to run with it, giving Paqueta a more loose kind of free role is the way to go. I do think arguably we need to play Ben Rama, purely because what it allows us to then do is to give Paqueta that freedom. When I think we put him in that left midfield position, it kind of restricts us because we don't have anyone willing to go down that wing other than Emerson, and it leaves us too lopsided.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem that we've seen in a few of the games, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that midfield we've got at the moment, it was working well at the beginning when we had that solidity. We've now tried to take in a couple of games where Souček hasn't been playing. Ward-Prowse has dropped deeper with Alvarez, or when it was at Brentford, it was Souček along Ward-Prowse when Alvarez was suspended. He just doesn't look. It's kind of the alarm bells that we had in the summer were showing when he's in that deeper position and he doesn't have that kind of extra support around him, or he hasn't got that license to play a little bit further without that defensive responsibility. Because Ward-Prowse, look at what he did against Olympiacos. He's got the technical ability to unlock a team like that. That is what he was brought in for. Set pieces and passes like that. That's what he was there for. Where we play him slightly deeper, especially against Olympiacos, I think Alvarez was going forwards a lot more as well, trying to press. And we just looked so open again because Ward-Prowse was kind of left in there. And to be honest, if you're coming up against Ward-Prowse, it's actually pretty easy to get past him. He's not actually that good at defending in those situations. So for me, I don't know how you feel about this, Mike, because it's difficult because I would like to see Paqueta drop deeper and then play Ward-Prowse slightly ahead of him and give Ward-Prowse that license to do what he does, which is press and, find the pockets, play it out to Benrahma or Kudus on the right or Bowen, whoever it is. And just give Paqueta a bit more of I think he's just better defensively than Ward-Prowse. But then do you risk then negating what Paqueta does in the final third? Because, we saw against Olympiacos again, he's the one that's got the goal when he's arriving late in the box. What would you do with that midfield against Forest?
I think I would personally play Paqueta as the player deeper of the two. Now, I know somebody arguing, well, he does give the ball away. He does, but that's because he's trying to be adventurous. Sometimes it is poor decision making, and that's something he will have to improve on. And it's something that Moyes has said that he loves and is infuriated by him, and that's because again he's a player that tries to play on the cuff, which can mean that you will be a bit loose in possession. However, that one pass out of 10 that isn't loose could be the key to opening up an attack. So you kind of sometimes you have to go over it because it's that maverick, right? Sometimes if you have that type of player, you really have to acknowledge and accept that sometimes you're not going to be as secure in possession. What worked best for us was when we had as our first kind of press from midfield with Ward-Prowse, and we had obviously Souček sitting. Now, if you put Paqueta deeper, yes, you're asking a lot of defensive work, but as we've seen with Paqueta, he doesn't shirk defensive work. He's often been in quite a few games, most tackles, most presses, most defensive duels won, etc. So when we got the best out of Ward-Prowse was when he was the furthest forward kind of in that midfield. For instance, the Brighton game, when he intercepted the pass, played it up for Antonio and then got ahead. I think even against Man City, he was in more advance of our midfield three as well. So I think that's the route we need to go. If we want to get the best out of Ward-Prowse, he has to be the more advanced of the three. I don't like the idea of Paqueta playing left wing. I've said it a number of times. The only thing that I really enjoy is his link play with Emerson. But again, Ward-Prowse is an intelligent player, as is Alvarez, as is Paqueta. As long as there is good communication between that three, you can then play in that role. Paqueta can go forward and Ward-Prowse can drop slightly in behind. As we saw with that one, Paqueta running from deep against Olympiacos was what got us a goal. It was a brilliant run, really intelligent, and a beautiful pass from Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me that isn't something that we can't work on and we can't look to do. Yes, it puts Paqueta deeper, but arguably he has better, slightly better ability defensively.
Yeah.
And I think, again, he has that little bit more of the risk taking in terms of his passing, in which that we could break that press. Whereas, as I saw against Olympiacos, Ward-Prowse would sometimes go backwards or sideways, something that we saw Martin Noble do quite a lot of, which would, in sometimes, would have fans baying for his blood because it's like, well, why are you not pushing forward? And I think that's what we kind of get in Ward-Prowse, is that very dependable player
I think it's the balance, isn't it? It's having that balance. And Paqueta, yes, he's going to be a bit more of a risk taker. Alvarez again is someone that will be a little bit more assured in possession if he's going to, like you mentioned, drop between the centre backs. If we've got likes of Aged pushing up into that midfield when we do have the ball and they're dropping off. So I guess it depends how Moyes wants to do it. And then obviously the front three, he's now got a decision whether to bring Antonio back in and whether how he's going to make Kudus, Bowen, Antonio, or Benrahma fit in that front three. And then, from a defensive point of view for us, Forest are going to have that danger in the transition. They really are. Awani's got 3 goals, 2 assists. Very, very good player. Alanga, another one I think he's got 2 or 3 assists for Forest, and he's got, really quick pace, and it's going to be a danger for us. So we need to be careful in those transitions. And I think I'd feel more comfortable having Paqueta deeper than Ward-Prowse next to Alvarez. Just from a or even if he wants to, it's hard to say.
That's one thing that we saw, I think, against Olympiacos. It's not that Ward-Prowse is bad defensively. He just doesn't have the legs. It's a bit like with Mark Noble.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was bad defensively. Just doesn't have the legs in which to keep up with some quick transitional play. And if he's caught out, then Alvarez is almost on his own there. Whereas
even Alvarez isn't rapid, is he? He's quite slow. So
no, what Alvarez has is a very good stride, and then a good timing in his tackles. I know his yellow cards don't necessarily say that,
God, but he scares me.
But sometimes it's even against Olympiacos. He went in with a really robust, fair challenge, but in today's football, it is probably a foul. And that's the problem with Alvarez, is that not all the time are his challenges actually fouls. It's just in the modern game, you can't necessarily challenge in the same way anymore. And I do feel that with Paqueta there, it's a little bit more pace. And I think Ward-Prowse is quite an effective forward presser. And again, his passing is good in the final third. And also, if I had to have, say, either Paqueta or Ward-Prowse in a position where I was thinking someone to have a long range shot just because there's not much on, but we've broke quickly and there's an opportunity, I would prefer Ward-Prowse because as we know through his history, he's got an incredible shot on him. So I think having him in that position is better than having someone like Paqueta to make those late runs. I think will actually bring out more within Ward-Prowse and allow us to be much greater in open play. And I've said it before in a previous one. The thing that I find the most frustrating about us is that in possession, we do tend to look slightly unimaginative and have an inability to break kind of through teams. However, when you go over the goals we've scored, they've all been attractive, really well-worked goals.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the frustration is lying, is that there are always these little fleeting moments, and you can hold up things like the goals and go, well, see, Moyes ball works. Moyes ball is brilliant. Look how good these goals are and how entertaining these goals are. But then it's those large sways and passages in between where it's
I just think
slow and predictable.
Yeah, I just think for me, when we do have possession of the ball, like what we saw against Everton, for example, I'm just not confident defensively in us to keep a clean sheet. And I don't think we're structured well enough to kind of negate that. And that's my biggest frustration is, okay, sometimes it's not going to work when we do have the ball, which we definitely need to work on. But also, it's just that second ball or that second transition of keeping teams kind of more pinned in. I think that's where we struggle a lot. And we're very easy to kind of break on, but because of what we mentioned before about the midfield. So it's why I deep down think our best midfield three long term would be Alvarez, Paqueta, Kudus. That is what my ideal midfield three is. Obviously, that's not going to happen at the moment because we just don't have the personnel really to take out Ward-Prowse, and we don't really have that attacking threat at the moment because Antonio's been dropped. So for me, we're going to have what I want to see from this Forest game, and what I think is going to be key is stopping those transitions. I think we'll have enough to break through Forest. I really do. I think we've got the players to do it. I think, like you mentioned, we've seen fleeting moments, and I think we'll have one or two of those against Forest or a set piece, whatever it will be. I don't see us not scoring against Forest. It's just the other end of it. It's the fact that I want to see us actually keep a clean sheet, which I just don't think we're going to do. I think we've leaked way too many goals for a team that's meant to be defensively resolute and defensively assured. So how do you see it going, Mike? What's your kind of final prediction with everything we've discussed? Because it's going to be a tough game. We know how the pattern's going to be. We said the same thing against Everton. It's now up to us to show that we can break teams down, and defensively we can stop them in transitions.
Yeah, I'd like to see him persist with the front three we saw against Olympiacos in Bowen, Benrahma and Kudus. However, I would swap Bowen and Kudus. I think Bowen came alive when he was back on the right-hand side, and we had our best passages to play when he was there, especially in the second half. And I think I'd love to see Kudus there. And again, two intelligent players. They have the ability to understand that kind of that right-hand side role. The ability to rotate makes it difficult for defenders to defend against. It doesn't need to be this hard and fast Bowen. You need to stay in the centre. If it's not working, swap with Kudus. Give the players the license in the game to turn around and go, I'm going centre forward. You're dropping over here. Give them that freedom and see what can happen. Because I think if you have Kudus play in that role, he can do, obviously not maybe to the same level, because again, we don't have the same level of players, but a similar kind of setup is Liverpool's way in which they used Firmino for years, in that he was that centre forward focal point. However, he would also drop into midfield to receive the ball, turn and go, and also look to be playing in the kind of, the likes of Bowen, or obviously in that case it was Salah and Mane that they had. Again, we can have that in terms of looking to try and find Benrahma, looking to try and find Bowen. Probably mean they can come a bit more. We can be a bit more adventurous with our fullbacks, and I think our fullbacks have been adventurous this year because of Soufal I think he's our leading assist maker. So I think, as you say, transition is going to be our main problem, dealing with them. Morgan Gibbs-White has been really their star player. Awoniyi, again, is physically robust and strong. If I was him, I would be targeting a Ged all game. So we do have to be smart when we do lose the ball. We either have to win it back very quickly or get ourselves back into a shape. That we've got two options. I think it was like with Pep. You always say you need to win within the first 2 to 3 seconds of losing the ball.
Like 5 seconds at Barcelona,
Yeah, 5 seconds to retrieve the ball. If not, you return to shape. And I think that sometimes we seem rock on a hard place as to what we want to do. So I think we have to have that mentality. If you can't win it within that first 5 seconds, just get back into shape and kind of stop them in transition, stop them coming at us.
Score prediction?
Let's go 2-1. West Ham. I think the Everton game might be a bit of a kick up the arse that they needed. But again, I think it would also be the template for Forest in which to come out and play against us.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think I'm not confident when I say 2-1, but I really hope we do edge it.
It's a 2-1 that can go either way, in my opinion. It's not because I think we've got better players. I just at the moment I don't think there's enough
the way it's going to go
in us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We'll see. I mean, we've said this so many times. We know what to expect from the game. So hopefully we can show our superiority with the squad that we've got and the players we've got, and really put on a good performance before we go into the international break again. Because since the last international break, that's where it started to go downhill. So hopefully we can use this as a reset and start to pick up some points again in the league. So yeah, that's going to be all today from our preview. Make sure to leave a like on the video, comment down below your score predictions and how you would like to see us line up against Forest. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And Mike, until next time,
come on, you irons.
Come on, you irons.